so that the audience can be blessed with your presence. Thank you, sir. Uh, Professor G. Pioneering safety analytics, a core area of research in the broad domain of safety science, while establishing a world-class laboratory of virtual reality at IIT. He has authored about 150 publications. He has been supervising, he has supervised 18 PhDs and has executed several consultancies. So request Professor Maiti to deliver his welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Full?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Respected Professor V.K. Tiwari, Director IIT Kharagpur, Patron and Chief Guest of this function, Mr. Andrew Page, Guest of Honor, Professor Obi Krishna, Convener. It is a pleasant day for the Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering and Analytics, IIT Kharagpur, which was established in July 2020 by our beloved Director, Professor V.K. Tiwari. As the founder chairman of the center, I welcome our beloved director, Professor Tiwari, Mr. Andrew Page, to this inaugural function. I am overwhelmed to see the participants, our colleagues, research scholars, students from across the world, and I am pleased to welcome everyone and all join this online function. CoE is of its kind, serve some noble purposes. A great initiative by our director, Professor V.K. Tiwari. We all are aware of the safety issues faced by organizations in particular and society at large. Accidents are still happening. Accident statistics reveal that the fatality and serious injury rates are in plateau over the last 25 years. There are reasons for this, such as lack of safety education at the university level, resulting in absence of trained personnel in this field due to low or no safety education at the university level, inadequate scientific research, etc. There are many. The CoE is here to improve on these shortcomings. The CoE is engaged in safety education, research, product, software development, consultancy, training, and other outreach programs. It is in sync with industry needs and national requirements. It creates the safety requirements for all key verticals, starting from industrial safety to mine safety to transportation safety, chemical, nuclear, to other verticals of safety. It is equipped with expert human resources supported by all the departments, schools, centers of IIT Kharagpur. Its industry consortium links to industry, government, and academic institutions in India and abroad. The CoE has planned to organize several events which will come one after another. This weekend talk is one of them. The CoE is also publishing quarterly newsletter, C News. Today, our beloved director, as well as our guest of honor, Mr. Andrew Page, will be rolling out this too. The Weekend Talk is a free online program. It is supported by eminent experts from academic institutions, industries, government bodies across the globe. We hope that it will create awareness and caring mindset among the stakeholders. We are hopeful for safety movement in this century, like the quality movement that we have seen in the 20th century. Today, we have the technical session after this inauguration. We are pleased to inform you that our guest of honor, Mr. Andrew Page, a world-renowned safety expert who served several leadership positions in safety, health, and environment, will also deliver his keynote speech in this technical session. I heartily once again welcome all of you to this inaugural session as well as the technical session. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for setting the tone of the session. Then I request you to project the Thank you, Sanjana. So, thank you, Sanjana. So, request our patron and chief guest, Professor V.K. Tiwari and Mr. Andrew Page, to roll out the weekend talk series. Sir, as this is e-rollout, we would request you to just click the mouse at your end, sir, and we seek your approval for the rollout.
Yeah, my approval is please go ahead.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धि
Also have the rollout of the communication initiative of Center of Excellence Quality Engineering and Analytics. This is the quarterly newsletter for seniors. So we seek your approval for this release also, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
An alumnus of IIT Kharagpur is an agricultural engineer. Professor goes to the director of IIT Kharagpur. Conferred with several accolades and honors like the JL Nehru Award, the NRDC Republic Day Pension Award, the ISAE Commendable Commendation Medal, and many more through his list. He has authored several books and is a member of various bodies. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very privileged to have him with us at this session. So, may we request you to please address the gathering.
Yeah, first of all, I'm very happy that my colleagues, Professor Mathi and Professor O.V. Krishna, along with Tata Steel and other colleagues from the various departments, have come together for this particular weekend talk inauguration that we are thinking of. In fact, I'm also happy that Professor Andrew Page has agreed to be the first speaker on today's lecture, and this will be inaugurated by one of a stalwart in the field of safety engineering. So I welcome each one of you. I welcome Professor Page, Andrew Page. I welcome each one of you who are there in this online platform for this particular inauguration meeting. I'm sure this pandemic has given us another opportunity that we can share. The whole day I was sitting here and having selection committee meetings, and immediately after that I am there in this. So because of the pandemic, we have got this new platform, a new normal way of life, and this has made people at the comfort of their homes across the globe, and still we are able to communicate and learn from each other. I think these are the outcomes you can say of the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic has struck us and given us a lot of near and dear ones we lost. But I think some of these aspects we can take as the positives that we can take forward for a new life and new normal life, maybe after post-COVID. Well, this is, I must tell you that I am associated with safety for a long time. Professor O.V. Krishna, Professor P.K. Ray, I don't know whether he is there, Professor J. Mathi, Professor Sahu. I think in the early stages when I was working for my ergonomics and safety engineering is my area of research, which I did at the master's level as well as at the PhD level. And we have also done some research in the area of safety, particularly ergonomic safety, and the work that we have done in the area of farm machinery and power engineering, and particularly for ergonomics, tractor ergonomics, and machinery safety, etc. And you may be knowing that agricultural safety is one of the concerns. We have a lot of deaths, particularly because of the overturning of the tractors, because of overturning of tractors on the actual ground while working in the field, as well as on the transport, because a lot of load is carried, and because of some of the mistakes, the overturning of the load has taken place and people have lost their life, and many other types of agricultural accidents which have taken. So from that time, the people are concerned, because in agriculture, majority of the people are employed in this, and similarly in the various industries. We came across together Professor P.K. Ray, Professor Mathi, Professor Sahu, and also other department I know, Professor Bhattacharya from mining engineering, and other professors are there who are working in safety. And in 2003, we came together and we wanted to learn something from Tata Steel. And there I must quote that Professor O.V. Krishna, who is now with us for the last couple of years, I think we learned as to what is the safety level that should be maintained in the Tata Steel. And we were associated with them right from 2003 end to about 2013 middle or so. In this process, we learned many things. We exchanged many ideas that we had with us, and also enriched our knowledge from the actual shop floor that was there. I still remember that a task was given to us that in the cold rolling mill, we wanted to have at a height of about 60 feet from the ground level, there was a cabin to be created for the persons to look at while purging is going on, and in the nitrogen purging when it was going on at that time, and how the whole material has to go inside. I think that was one of the big challenges that we had started. And I still remember that we were given a big challenge, and we thought that, there was apprehension that myself, Professor P.K. Ray, of course, Professor Mathi was not at that time, but I think he was also an analytic person, and Professor Saul. So at that particular time, in fact, it was a big challenge, and there was a perception from Tata Steel that whether we will be able to do or not. But I think we took it as a challenge because we also wanted to learn something, and Tata Steel also wanted to guess whether IIT Kharagpur can help us. I tell you that myself went up to the monkey ladder, and then I went inside that the whole cabin, and we did this study. And in fact, I can tell you that we engaged students from our farm machinery and power engineering who are working in tractors and other safety. At the same time, some students from industrial engineering. And these students along with us, and the engineers from Tata Steel, the managers from Tata Steel, line managers in various locations. So I tell you that we took up this study, and we had large data collection At the same time, we could analyze the data and we could install that model, mock-up, and ultimately the actual cabin. I hope that cabin was being modified. Professor O.V. Krishna is there. He may add to that certain modification they further did. So that sort of challenge was there. And I can tell you that when we are talking of safety, we have to, while we are talking of the output of any production system, we have to also talk of the safety, because more is the safety, more will be the output from the persons. So we have to concern, because as I knew that when the person goes into that cabin 60 feet away, I think ever it was difficult for him after 2 hours, 3 hours when he used to come back, he would not like to go back again and work in that strenuous condition. So I tell you, this safety is very much concerned and linked with the production of that particular shop. And of course, Tata Steel is a very world-class organization where they do talk about and they take care of their people who are working. I think this is a bigger learning that I got from Tata Steel. And from that time, Professor O.V. Krishna was associated with us. We took up several projects. We also created one copyright for ergonomic performance indicator for different workshops. I mean, we went to various areas. We went to mines. Of course, I did not get opportunity to go inside a mine, but we went to the locations of mines and the other areas where we could see as to what are the difficulties faced, what type of work is needed, and what sort of training to be given to those managers, either they are in mine or open cast mines, or on the shop floors on various locations, whether they are working on heat area, or they are working in arduous conditions, or they are working on trains, actually the cranes. So various areas, and on that basis, I can tell you that we got to learn a lot about safety, and also we imparted whatever we knew about safety. So this association with Tata Steel, I think we started in 2003 until 2013. As I said, we trained more than about 200 line managers and engineers, and we had a good relation from there. We wanted that there should be some sort of a center of excellence, some sort of a department, or some sort of a location where we can concentrate the all requirement of safety in various fields. I know that our faculty colleagues in chemical engineering, mining engineering, of course I have said, industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, construction work, lot of areas where the safety is concerned. And in fact, apart from the organization which is there in Dhanbad, I think we do not have so organized way of talking with regard to safety. And therefore, it was very essential that in IIT Kharagpur, we should have a safety engineering center. We tried about 3-4 years back, but somehow or the other it fizzled out. And we know that there are many people, road safety, of course, civil engineers are working, some of our civil engineering friends are here. We are working on the road safety as well. So that way, I think it was very just that Professor O.V. Krishna, Professor Mathi came forward and advised me that can we have a center, and in fact, they created with the help of their other professors like Professor Bhattacharya from mining and other professors, Professor Mekab and all those people who are the related persons in this area of safety engineering. And hence we wanted to have a center of excellence in safety engineering and analytics. We also know that while we're talking of safety engineering and analytics, quality, reliability and quality is very important, because when you talk of a product, what is the quality of the product and what is the reliability of the product taken together. We have a center of actually Sugi Chaudhary Center of Excellence, or you can say the School of Quality and Reliability. So I think while we talk of quality and reliability and the safety engineering and analytics, I think it gels very well. And there we can be proud that if the center come together, if we work together, I'm sure my faculty colleagues who are there in different departments, They have joined the Center of Excellence as well as some of them in Quality Reliability Center as well. I tell you that this is a great opportunity that we have created this center. When Professor Maiti wanted that people from other sections and centers and departments join, they have got a good group which will be working on these. Whether you talk of road safety, whether you talk of industrial safety in chemical engineering, petroleum engineering, we talk of agricultural engineering, we talk of industrial engineering, any field, civil engineering for construction as well as pavement design and all that. I think various areas where people require knowledge of safety and a very strong component of safety has to be in place if you are talking of engineering organizations like IITs. And therefore, the center was established. I'm happy that many of our friends have joined hands. And from the time we have joined Professor Maiti and Professor Obi Krishna, who is, of course, a visiting professor in industrial engineering, has also contributed. And I can tell you that every 15 days, something or the other, these people come forward and tell me that these are the things we can do. And the group is created. In this regard, I can tell you that we are going to have this center where there will be some few core faculty, apart from the other faculty and the students who will be working in reliability from different other departments, so that we will create a critical mass of people who will be safety engineers and who can be employed in different industries and help the industries. We would also like to go through the regulations of the industries, rules, regulations and laws which must be followed. And those are, I'm sure those will be also incorporated in the subjects which Professor Maiti and other Professor Vachati, Professor Obi Krishna and other professors come together and frame the course curriculum for at least a master degree course, or to start with a dual degree course. The BTECs could be in mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, or industrial engineering, and there could be a dual degree course or a 1-year course which will be a dual degree in safety engineering, analytics, or safety, quality, and reliability, and all that. So I think we are looking at such prospects. And of course, PhD students will be coming out in the field of these safety engineering analytics as well as quality and reliability. So I think this is the requirement of the area for such a field. I'm very happy that Professor Andrew Page has agreed to our request and be the first speaker on a weekend talk of safety engineering management and analytics. I think SEMA, they are talking. Very nice. I think I must congratulate my faculty colleagues who are always trying to innovate. And these are the things by which we can attract more and more fresh undergraduates and postgraduates who work in the area of safety engineering. We had we had done a lot of analytical work and the papers, etc. we have published, and many of our students have worked in this area. So I can say that with the help of such galaxy of the people, and I can hear that there are many people from across the globe are here on this particular platform for the weekend talk. And if we have professors and senior achievers like Professor Andrew Page and others, I'm sure that this center will go to greater heights and will create name for itself. In fact, I'm sure that we are also giving short courses, maybe a few credit courses to our undergraduates, because these graduates go in any field of, we can talk also in the field of medical engineering, safety in medical engineering. It is very essential. We are going to give medical degree from this institute. And therefore, even in medical, lot of safety is essential. You see, the patient is given gas, say oxygen, but if it is not properly fitted, if the tube is there for drip, if the rate is not properly fixed, I can tell you that there will be problem to the patient. And therefore, it is essential that proper knowledge is available with the person who is involved, whether the safety you concerned in medical science or medical practice, or a medical practitioner on the hospitals or in the hospitals, industries, wherever we are talking of. I think this field of safety engineering, and when we are talking of a lot of data of this kind, analytics is important. We must know as to what we can do. We are talking of artificial intelligence and machine learning to be employed in this. You may be knowing that at IIT Kharagpur, we have a center of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we would like to introduce all these on the advancement of safety engineering as well. How best we can. We know that some of the arduous areas, some of the arduous tasks which are performed in the industries, particularly where it's difficult to reach as well as difficult to go and do some welding, etc. And you may be knowing that the robots are employed. So because human being is not safe over there, and that's why this has been done. So in this regard, I can tell you that while we are talking of this, we have to talk of the Industry 4.0 and see where advanced manufacturing takes place with all sorts of safety concern are taken together. With this, maybe that I do not know what else they want me to do, but I think with this, I will welcome all the persons who are connected here. Maybe some students are there. I welcome my students, my faculty colleagues from the different departments, Professor Andrew Page from he's of course in now VP Corporate C in Tata Steel. Very nice that he is associated here. And other scientists and engineers who are associated with this. I hope that some of the line managers and safety engineers or people who are working in different area. I'm sure that this particular weekend talk is going to be now every week, just like we are having in advanced manufacturing center. So if that is the way, I think every week we will have new and good professors and achievers who will be talking in the area of safety engineering, management and analytics. And this will help the practitioners, it will help the scientists, engineers, and all the people concerned. With this, I think I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much. Welcome to each one of you on this platform. Thank you.
Sir, thanks a lot for motivating the audience, the participants, and also re-strengthening that good safety is good business. We now proceed to our next issue. The next name that I'm going to take is synonymous to passion and enthusiasm. So the next name is of Professor O.B. Krishna. So Professor O.B. Krishna is credited to the present-day safety management system at Tata Steel, India and Southeast Asia. She has worked after spending 36 years in Tata Steel. She has worked for 3 years in DuPont Sustainable Services, providing consultancy in behavior-based safety, contract safety management, mechanical integrity, quality assurance, and to many overseas companies like RIL, ABG, and other chemical and steel industries. So a BTech and MTech in mechanical engineering with a PhD in safety engineering. Professor Krishna is now associated with IIT Kharagpur. So, sir, we are blessed with your presence, and we request you to propose a vote of thanks. Sir.
I remember when MIT was giving process safety training to the British petroleum officers, I approached IIT Kharagpur, the team of Professor Tiwari, Professor P.K. Ray, Professor Maiti. Why don't you help us in the process safety management? And Tata Steel was indebted to you. You all trained 100 people of Tata Steel, and it has become a big asset. Then I got thinking of, since that time I used to have a thinking. The premier institutes like IITs should train students in the safety engineering so that competencies will go to across the world. And the IIT itself should provide consultancy to organizations by design so that the gap which industries have got on safety engineering and management, that would be filled. I'm very happy and thankful to Professor Tiwari, the present director, who himself is a safety engineer, who himself is an ergonomist. He has understood this and he had this safety Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering Analytics under the Institute of Eminence program. So thank you very much for your, by doing this thing, you are helping the whole, not only the nation, whole world. IIT took the lead. No institute across the world is giving training on safety analytics. Safety analytics, we have started from IIT Kharagpur, and this knowledge has to go across the world through CoE and SEA. So thank you very much for coming here and inaugurating this program and giving a very good suggestions. You have mentioned everything which I thought of mentioning some of the things. Thanks to your memory, your contributions to Tata Steel, we all remember still. Mr. T.V. Narendran still remembers all these things. My friend Andrew Page, he has worked in all the disciplines, operations, he's R&D, supply chains. He headed one of the British Steel organizations as the managing director. And when Tata Steel and Chorus joined together, he took the challenge of taking all these 35 million plants to world class in safety, and he made it. It's very, very interesting with his innovativeness, with his work, he had made it. And now the Tata Steel as a whole, including Europe, Southeast Asia, India, we are one of the best in the world. We are one of the best compared to many of the developed countries. With the association of CoE, the Tata Steel may do much better. And I'm thankful to Andrew Page that he had agreed, not only giving the guest of honor keynote address, but he said he will be associated with CoE-SEA in further to help it will perform its objectives. Professor Maiti, I need not tell you, you are one of the expert in India, safety expert, who worked more than 15 years in this field. And you are the pioneer in bringing safety analytics. I'm aware of it. And with your passion in safety and safety engineering and analytics, after Professor Tiwari, the director, had made you the chairman, and under your leadership, I think this will take a different heights in fulfilling its objectives. And I'm also thanking for giving one of the keynote address today after the inaugural session. And how can I forget my moderators, Mom Mitra from Tata Steel, and the Savi, Kasi, Sinjana, the research scholars have been putting a lot of efforts to make all these programs very, very successful. I'm delighted to see 279 participants across the world. Many people, this 8 o'clock we have selected so that the people from Europe and US also can join. Some of the speakers also will be joining. That's why this 8 p.m. program we have taken. In response to this, I'm very happy to see the participants around 280. So thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Mom, for giving this opportunity.
Not sir, as usual for having such a passionate session. So the inaugural session concludes here. We'll now proceed towards the technical session. We'll be having our keynote speeches. I request Professor J. Maiti, Chairman CoE-SEA, to deliver on the overview of safety engineering management and analytics. Over to you, sir.
So, Mom, I want to share, but the share option is not working here in my computer. Yes.
Sir, now you can share. Yes, sir.
Yes. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Okay, then. So, thank you, Mom. And I must tell at the beginning that Mr. Andrew Pace is the main keynote speaker, and I just in front of you, I just present very briefly that what is safety engineering, what is safety management, and what is safety analytics. So in 15-20 minutes of presentation, these three issues I want to present in front of you. Now, all of us know that the starting point in safety engineering is knowing about hazards, and then how the hazards lead to accident. So you take any system, be it mining, chemical, industrial, any plant, you just consider there will be hazards. Hazard is any real or potential condition that can cause harm or loss to targets. So here targets are people, property, and environment. The key issues what industry is facing, that what are the hazards present, that is called hazard identification. And then second is risk. What is risk? We are saying hazard is having the potential to cause harm. So risk talks about that quantification. Then you have to prioritize the hazards, and you have to place the hazard control measures, which are basically interventions, which are basically risk control systems. So what will happen? Okay. So mom, I'm not able to, it's not working, mom.
We can see the PPT, sir. It is not scrolling down.
No.
I will request our other moderator. Sir, just 1 second.
There is a screen which is basically saying that
Yes,
right
sir.
side.
That you have to decline actually, sir.
Okay, so I was not knowing that. Anyhow, so okay, let me present here what will happen. This hazard leads to accident. So can anybody share my presentation, or can I go out and share again? I'm sorry,
Yes,
I'm extremely sorry. I'm stopping sharing first, and then I am sharing again. I'm so sorry for this. So hazard, if it is not controlled, it leads to accident. And accident has different consequences. So this path is known as accident path. We all know, particularly who are working in the safety engineering domain or the people who are practicing safety, we all know that hazards to consequence is the path, and that is first thing to be known by the safety engineers. Now, how the risk and the risk control system is coming into picture. You have seen that if you do not control hazard, accident will take place. So as a result, there will be measures, either engineering, administrative, and managerial intervention, which will ultimately prevent the accident to happen. This is known as accident prevention. And the risk control system, what we use for this is known as preventive risk control system. Now, if accident takes place, then you require to mitigate the consequence or the loss from the loss control point of view. So there will be mitigative risk control system. These two collectively we say risk control system. Now, what are those risk control systems? See, there are different many classification of risk control system. I have enlisted few of the risk control system, like plan design, instrumentation and alarms, inspection and maintenance, operating procedure, staff competency, plan change, permit to work, communication, emergency arrangement. So these are some of the risk control system. Now, issue is that when and where and how we will basically introduce the risk control system in the total in designing. So that plan design, these are all very broad things, very in-depth things. It requires time, but I will not go into that depth. But I will tell you something about what we understand that plan design means. When you are designing plan, how are you taking care of the safety issues? How we are taking care of the hazards? This concept is known as prevention through design, or PTD. Actually, what happened when you think of developing a system or such as a plant or a machine, that is a product or a work system or a process, there is a stage that is called, there are certain stages, several stages called system life cycle. It started with business concept, followed by design, then build or manufacturing, construction, then operation and maintenance, and decommission. Now, you want to design for safety, so that means you have to understand all the hazards. You have to have hazards knowledge during the conceptualization and design stage. If we forget to take into this hazard knowledge while designing the system, then what will happen? It will basically it will pass on to the downstream, and ultimately the result will be very, very ineffective. And this is known as inefficiency design. Now, inefficient design introduces inherent risk or residual risk. Safety engineering consider this as one of the important aspects. Now, you just consider that, okay, my design is, the system is in place, we have designed everything. But even then, there are other issues. What are those other issues? The other issues are, if you see any plant or any system or machine, there will be ultimate or a process, there will be certain elements or component like technology, physical environment, people, and the work processes. These will deteriorate over time. This will deteriorate over time. So what is required then? You have to understand when it is going to deteriorate. If the deterioration starts, that is nothing but in adding on some more risk, which is known as entropy risk, which basically day-to-day operation and maintenance or poor maintenance, these risks are introduced. So what will happen? You have, based on design, you have residual risk. Now you are adding entropy risk. The total risk, when it goes to a certain level, accident takes place. And that time you take corrective action. And after that, you do a lot of maintenance. And then finally you restore back the system either to the original state. It is hardly likely, it is not possible. It will not go to the original state. It will accumulate further inherent or residual risk. As a result, the total risk in the system increases. And what will happen? The same thing continues, and at certain amount of time, what will happen? The system will not be under working condition or operational. So you have to dispose this. So this is known as that entropy risk model. This, along with the life cycle concept, very, very important for safety engineers. And in the safety engineering, these things basically we talk about. There are a lot of research development issues. There are implementation, monitoring, and control issues related to this. Then what I mean to say that the safety engineers does this. Now, where the management is coming into picture. So if we say so many components, so many things are there. So now what is required then? It required to be managed properly. What is the management? Here the management is managing the risk. That means safety management does all kinds of activities to manage the total risk below threshold. That's why the interface is coming between engineering and management, and the management principles and philosophies all were borrowed from the management discipline. Here in general, we understand that in management from organization point of view, the organization goal and objectives, how it is to be achieved, there will be set of activities, and there will be different functions like directing, planning, organizing, staffing, monitoring, and control. It is true for safety management also. So as a result, the safety management, it's basically start from the commitment from the leadership, from the leaders and the exemplary leadership, basically the starting point. And then there are different stages, different different programs, different ways, different policies, so that will be adopted, and finally you will be able to manage the system or plant with you, and that so that the total risk will be within the acceptable level. There is the management issue. I'm not going into details of safety management and all those things, because in the subsequent weekend lectures, some of the things from the safety engineering point of view, safety management point of view, as well as safety analytics point of view, we will be discussing. The issue is industry is doing this, organization is doing this. Everybody will, there are engineering issues, there are management issues. Then we are also measuring that whether my safety performance is good or bad, whether the safety management system effective or not. We all know the iceberg model, and ultimately what will happen if you have to have measures or data. Here is the role of data and analytics or safety analytics. Actually, we don't know what are the safety data. We are basically seeing at the tip of the iceberg. The data is basically below the water level. So far up to unsafe conditions we know. Then if it is known fully, then why the safety performance across the world remains plateau? That means we require new thoughts. That is where Center of Excellence in Safety Engineering and Analytics, IIT Kharagpur, working on. What are the new thoughts? I have already told you, hazard will be there, accident paths will be there, then the risk control system will be there, and the risk control system, if doesn't function properly, then accident will take place. So these are basically from the, and all those things to be maintained, controlled, monitored. These are basically related to the safety engineering management. What is the importance here is that you bring data. If you believe that if you go back to the 20th century, when the quality movement takes place, then that all know that Deming, D.W. Deming, the quality guru, he said, for the quality improvement point of view to the industries, we believe in God, other must bring data. And as a result, what happened, now the movement started in industry across the world. What is safety data? What is lagging indicator, leading indicator? There will be lecture on lagging indicator, leading indicator later on. And these, along with the industry 4.0, whatever director says, so these industry 4.0 tools and technologies and the techniques helps us in collecting the safety data. And I say that is the reason for the birth of safety analytics. Then what safety analytics will give you? What other safety management is not giving? Safety analytics is not giving anything else other than data-driven safety management. It will basically, if you have data, we will create one of the lectures for data, but actually what happened from the data, you will get information, you will get insight. You will get information, insight for the past, for the present, for the future, but we have to have correct data. What happened, what can go wrong, why it has gone wrong, and all those things, or what is going to happen now, and what are the actions to be taken, and what will happen if I do not do anything, or what will happen if I do something. So what the best course of action, all those things are safety analytics. Now the safety analytics from the data analytics perspective, all descriptive, prescriptive, and predictive analytics is possible. So that is where the interface. So the interface is basically that safety, in order to make safety engineering and management effective, you have evidence, and that safety analytics will help you in doing this. It's a huge area, and I cannot tell now that all those things, but please keep in mind that in huge area, things will be coming one after another. When you have data pre-processing to predict preventive analytics, you will be able to do. Then considering all those, the center in IIT is doing, basically, we are talking about all verticals, starting from industrial, mining, transportation, oil and gas, construction, agri, farm, manufacturing, MSME, public, all those verticals. But we have created a roadmap that, along with all the thematic areas, aspects like fire safety, process safety, risk assessment, prevention through design, disaster management, all those things. The beauty of this development is the outer periphery, which is basically the industry 4.0. And with this, I conclude my lecture. I just want to tell you that safety engineering, management, and analytics, they are very much interrelated. One is complementary to other, and this is the era of safety analytics. So with this, I thank you for your patient sharing.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for formative session. We now proceed towards our next keynote speech. So, Mr. Andrew Page has worked for Tata Steel, Porous, and British Steel over 37 years in iron making, steel making, rolling to steel coated operations. He rose to managing director of coated products, business of Porous, long products, further to integrated operation of Porous. The challenging role what Mr. Andrew had when he became Director of Health and Safety was that there were about 120K employees, 80K contract employees with many greenfield projects ongoing. So he was instrumental in bringing many significant improvements and establishing TSL as a benchmark in health and safety. He also chaired the World Steel Association Health and Safety Committee for 3 years. So, sir, we are highly privileged to have you with us today, and we request you to address the audience, sir, with the global perspective of safety engineering, management, and analytics. So, over to you, sir. Sir, you have to unmute.
First mistake. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you in what is obviously the first weekend talk, and it's been great to listen to the professors beforehand, and hopefully what I will cover will have some linkage and some overlap, but maybe some different insights for some of the same issues. And I'd like to explore what some of the opportunities are really for people in the profession. Let me just see if I can share my screen. I cannot find my file now. It's not letting me, for whatever reason, it's not letting me share, I don't think.
Shall we share? Shall we share?
Yeah, let me see if I have one more go, Mom, and then if not, I will come back to you.
In the meantime, I will request the participants to post their queries in the chat box. Post this session, we'll be having our question and answer session. So you can just type in your queries in your chat box. We'll be collating and asking the questions to our.
All right, I can see one. Just 1 minute and I will be with you.
Are you getting the share option, sir? Are you getting the share option?
Yeah, for whatever reason, it shut down PowerPoint, I think. So I will be, hopefully I will be able to do it now.
Yeah, Professor Maiti, very good.
Sure, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. So I would like to cover three areas that are huge areas, but I would like to just speak a little bit about what I see as some of the opportunities from my experience in to the end of my career in health and safety, but probably when I was running operations, and when you're trying to lead teams, and how you want to try and get the involvement and commitment of everybody and engagement of everybody in the team in a subject such as health and safety, and what that means in behavior. And then finally, in the area of health hazards. And I suppose from my experience in India, I saw this as an opportunity. But if you look at the data, and I will share some data from the UK with you, it really is a huge opportunity. And countries throughout the world have a huge opportunity in health hazards and dealing with health hazards. So the first of those is risk thinking. My screen has gone down there. So I show this image very often when I talk to people about risk, be they professionals in the health and safety, as many of the people on the call will be, or leaders, because when we talk about risk, I always feel that people make their own judgments about what is risk. And the reason I show you this image is that risk appears to be very obvious in this image. And yet in the workplace and in whatever work we do, we see that risk is less obvious. We then quickly move into the risk about consequence and likelihood and calculations and quantify around it. And I always feel we probably need to think a little bit more about, well, what is risk? And do we all see risk in the same way? Having said that, a huge amount of work has been done on risk, and many of you will be familiar with things like the Heinrich and Bird triangle. This is, I suppose, what many people talk about. Heinrich and Bird focus quite a lot on what I'd call the accident triangle, the ratio between fatalities, lost time injuries, reportable, first aid injuries, and the statistical analysis of what those ratios would be. So for every one fatality, you would have 30 lost time, 300 reportable, and so on. And that was very valid, and I think has stood the test of time in a lot of areas. But from my experience, and certainly my experience in high hazard industries, we worked very hard in saying, well, do those ratios really work? If I'd looked at Tata Steel, when you're handling molten metal, you don't really get too many injuries when you spill molten metal of lost time injury and reportable. If it's severe, it's a fatality, or you've been lucky and it was a near miss. There's not really that much in between. So the same, I would say, probably applies for working at height. Where people are working at height, if you fall in from 5 or 10 meters, the chance of just sustaining an injury is actually quite low. It's a fatality. So you're not going to have a lot of knowledge in this area here. Over the years, companies, including Tata Steel and other companies I know well, have worked incredibly hard at doing more and more unsafe acts and decisions, unsafe situations, and particularly the unsafe acts, the behavioral part of it, because we know that drives a lot of incidents. But I think you can go further than that and try and say, well, what are the risks that an organization is taking that may be harder to identify? And those are identified in these areas, and I'll explain them on the next slide. Behavior risks, design and process risks, culture and decision risks. They're much less tangible and harder to identify. But one of the things I would say of any health and safety person, or anybody who's running an injury, an operations with risk, as you get more and more engagement, you'll get more and more data at the bottom of this triangle. And more data doesn't necessarily give you more and more information or more knowledge. And to stop fatalities, and we went through this journey in Tata Steel, particularly in Tata Steel India, we had to say we've got lots of data, but how do we sort that data to valuable knowledge that is going to stop fatalities? And we had to filter that data of unsafe acts and decisions, and in these behavior design and process cultural risks, you have to filter it to say which are the ones that are high risk potential. And one of my messages for health and safety professionals would be to say, encourage data, but one of your key roles is to sort that data into its value to stop the highest potential fatalities, this line of highest risk potential here. Just to explain a little bit further of the three areas of risk behind that. I would describe behavior risk is it's well visible. The failures are very well visible. And we tend to be much more better at recording when we see something wrong in a behavior than we are in seeing good in a behavior. And yet most of us will know that much more is achieved by recognizing the good than just picking up on failure. So there's audit observation programs around that, but it also needs to go a little bit deeper into what is the attitude of people? What's the drive and energy of people to operate safely? And that gets to what will you see when you do audits and observations? But really what you want to be able to do is when no one is watching, no one is supervising, what do people do? What's the normal behavior that people do? The other is about design and process risks. The previous professor spoke a little bit about it. That's in the design of equipment. They're obviously less visible, often latent. They take longer to develop and manifest themselves. A lot to do with the interface with equipment and processes. And this area of change management is often an area where these issues arise. The third area is probably harder for people to get their mind around. It's less tangible. And yet, if we have an event, people are very quickly able to look at the non-tangible behavioral things, the cultural things that have driven some of those events. What we're less good at doing is identifying some of those beforehand. Some companies do that more, and I think more and more companies. The whole area about what is the safety culture in an organization is driving that debate, and I think companies are looking more and more around some of those areas. And I'd encourage people to think about what are some of those areas that the culture of an organization is defined by. I gave you some of the things here that can be part of that, about in decision making, about communication. Embarrassment and management can mean, how open are management and leaders to hear bad news. I think the final slide from the professor said that very clearly. Is if you're not hearing about problems and you're not hearing bad news, it means you're probably not hearing reality in an organization. So I'd encourage people, on this to think about where are they picking up these deeper signals in an organization. I would call them weak signals. They're not as strong. They're not people having injuries. These are weak signals. They'll be different for different organizations, but you must be that inquisitive mind to go out there and say, what are we picking up from this? How do we get it value? And how do we stop fatalities in an organization? So those would be my thoughts about risk thinking. The second area I'd like to talk to you about is about behavior. And I think a number of you will be familiar with some of this subject, but I'd like to focus on one particular area of it and not cover, because we could talk for a long time about behavior. So behaviors can be driven by consequences. As I touched on earlier, the positive consequences in health, well-being, satisfaction, obviously safety, but a whole range of others around that. And they can be driven by negative consequences around it. To do that, we generally, and I use this term that's sort of measured by what I would describe as policing. People go out and say, are people doing the right thing or not? Can we correct? And as I touched on earlier, there's nothing wrong with that, but as humans, we're much better at correcting and seeing what's wrong rather than reinforcing what's good. And yet we know that the value is much more in reinforcing what's good. That doesn't mean we should ignore the negative, but do we do enough of reinforcing the good? But one key part of that is that it has value when it's immediate and certain. So if someone is on a work at height situation, they're not wearing fall arrest equipment, they're not protected, guarded, but they're there, then if something goes wrong, the impact is immediate and certain. So they'll fall and it'll be death. So the reaction has to be quick. But when behaviors and consequences aren't immediate, so they're delayed or they're not certain, it could happen, it could not happen, then people's reaction about behavior tends to be quite different. And I'll come on to that a little bit later. When we talk about behaviors, I would often use the word advising. In the world I live in, we'd often say to people, if I were you, I would do this. It's advice. And in the industry, we had one of the titles was health and safety advisor. So there's a person of expertise, but they're advising, which is fine, but it doesn't really have the level of engagement that the role, I think, could have. So our behaviors are driven by thinking, and that's called antecedents. That's probably a word we use a little bit in English, and hopefully it translates to other countries as well. It's from a Latin word, which it means before doing. That's what it literally means. And there's three things here I'd like to just highlight to you. One of those, which again the previous president, was the mindset. We only see behaviors. It's the iceberg. We only see behaviors. Beneath that is some really deep held beliefs and an attitude and I won't cover that today. The second is about mind map. The bit I'd ask you to think about in mind map is about how much of what you do is conscious and how much what you do is subconscious. So as human beings, we'll do about 6 or 7 things consciously. It is quite demanding on the brain. We'll do thousands of things subconsciously. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But the area I will focus on is about currencies. Currencies are, and I'll explain these later, are what I would say the challenges that go on in a workplace that we could probably do something about, and I'd encourage you to think about, that drive behaviors, and in driving the behaviors, if you can change behaviors before they occur rather than having to do it through consequences. And as such, it's much more sustaining. And this area is called coaching. And this word is used a lot. And in some parts of the world, coaching is seen as quite a remedial activity. I see coaching as a very positive activity. Many of you are on from India. The India cricket team are some of the best players in the world, and each of those will still have a coach to make them even better. So it's about sharing of issues and building the opportunity to be even better from that. And the coaching conversations that I would encourage are what we've been taught and learned many times about having open conversations. So I would encourage coaching conversations more and more, and as health and safety professionals to be competent and confident to have coaching conversations. If I was with you and we had more time, I'd ask you which of these is the best style of engagement. And I'll tell you, they all have a role. The most sustaining is coaching, but policing has a part. If you see someone doing something very dangerous, you have to act now. You can't say, I think I'll start a coaching conversation. You have to say, stop now. It has to be that response. So I don't want to be negative about any of them. They all have a place, but I would try and open your mind to coaching conversations. Of those 4 currencies now, you'll see the 4 circles. I want to just talk to you about those. The first is called alpha. And alpha is just a term of a particular type of brainwave. This isn't, there's a bit of neuroscience and psychology behind this. And again, I would welcome you and invite you as professionals in health and safety to broaden your mind to these sort of areas because it drives behavior. So alpha is a particular type of brainwave of about 5 or 6 types of brainwave. And as humans, what alpha means is that the brain needs to rest. So it's still conscious, but the brain is resting. You're in automatic mode. In the Western world, we'd say the lights are on, but nobody's at home. It's that sort of brain resting. What it means is you're on autopilot. Your mind and body in 2 different places. You're daydreaming. You're very relaxed in that. And the average human needs to do that for 10 minutes in every hour. It can be more, can be less. Let me give you an example. If you were doing your final exams in a 3-hour exam, you will not have alpha state. You'll postpone it. You'll postpone it. And when you leave the exam after 3 hours, you're quite mentally drained because you have sacrificed alpha time. Your brain needs to rest. And that's one of the things that you would see. But normally it would take place every 10 minutes. When your brain is relaxed, peripheral vision is dropped significantly. So you don't see much above eye line. You don't see much below knee line in that. You have tunnel vision. You'll react in those areas. That will knock you out of alpha. So slips, trips, and bumps are a very common experience of when people are in alpha. And that's approximately 80% of work accidents. They may not be the most severe, but they're certainly high in number. So the question you have is, can we work safely when we're in alpha? Because we'll work in a whole variety for quite a few hours. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. But if you, with your colleagues, know and have an open conversation about alpha state, and you all will sometimes have alpha state, when dangerous things are happening, you can make sure people are rested before the most hazardous things are being done. The most dangerous part of a process, the highest risk bit in engineering, you can have that. Or if you see someone dropping into alpha, you can have the courage to say to them, you've dropped into alpha. Let's get back. Let's refocus on it. So it becomes part of a conversation rather than it's something no one said anything about. The second currency I'd like to talk to you about, and again, open up, is that we all have habits. We have good habits that can be safe, and we want them to be safe, and we have bad habits that are unsafe. But our habits are things we do without thinking. When you have your dinner this evening, you will not your subconscious mind will be dealing with you taking food, putting it onto a plate, eating it, digesting it. All of that will be subconscious. You won't have to think about it before. But if I said to you, fold your arms, and then said, if you put your right arm over your left arm, and if I said to you, fold your arms the other way, the one you do subconsciously, your normal habit, the other one you'd have to think about. And it would take you a few seconds to think about it. So habits are with us all the time. And inevitably, we've picked up good habits, but we will all picked up bad habits from a variety of ways. I've lost that. I had to decline. To change a habit, on average, takes 21 days. I play a little bit of golf. So if I want to change a piece of my golf swing, I have to accept it'll take 21 days and probably about 7,000 swings before I can change it and it becomes a routine. with it. We all probably understand and know that, and therefore the question for us is, how do we do it? Because when we're doing our habits, we're operating subconsciously and we have no judgment. So again, it's vital that people around us are aware, or we ourselves are aware of our unsafe habits, but the people around you are the people who are aware of your unsafe habits. And they should have the courage, as you should have the courage, to speak to people about what are the unsafe habits. We should encourage conversation about habits and why do we do things. And then recognize and reinforce safe and interrupt and replace the unsafe. The third area I think I'd talk to you about is time versus risk. It's something we're all aware of, and we think some people have it more than others, and that's probably true, but we all have it. It's again the brain and the neuroscience saying that we want to drive efficiency. The brain wants to drive efficiency in it. So we have phrase, I'll only be a minute. We make judgments about risk versus reward on many, many things. Lots of it subconsciously, some of it consciously. And when we're looking, and if you take governments making decisions about a whole variety of things, that risk versus reward is really much on their agenda. But the brain has this thing called 168, the drive, the number of hours in a week, and that's the subconscious drive with it. That drives from a variety of things. It can be added to about how we value personal time against work time. So when I started in the steel industry in the 1980s, at certain times you would have things. As soon as you finish that job, you can go home. That drove people's behavior in how they would do that job. It was said to motivate people, but it undoubtedly drove people's behavior in how they did it. But we all have that pressure anyway. It's built into us as humans. So that time pressure can often appear to come from management, but even if it's not there with management, it'll be there. And therefore, one of the challenges of management is to say, we don't want you to think about, we want you to think about risk, but we don't want you to unbalance that against reward. And we want to have conversations about what you perceive as risk and how you're going to manage that risk. The fourth area is personal risk perception. I would say to you, those of you who have children, you will have this, you'll have said this many times. When your children want to go and do something, you'll say, no, that's not very safe, I'll do it for you. We've decided that we don't want the risks of our child or children being harmed, but we've decided we can do it safer. Driving is a great example of this, where you look at risk rating based on severity and likelihood, and people will say just the simple numbers. When I'm driving, I understand the severity of an incident could be 10, but my judgment of the likelihood of happening is 0. So it's 0. But if I look at someone else, I think the likelihood of them happening is higher. So it bases that we have a very positive outlook about the likelihood of harm to ourselves. And that means that we put ourselves into risk that we don't need to do. Other people looking at us do the same thing would have a different perception to that. So it's not the severity of an accident that you're failing to realize, but it's the likelihood of it happening to you. So those are 4 areas we call currencies. I think it would be called challenges. But I would encourage you to think about them as areas you can have conversations with teams in a exploring way about what do people see. Because when you get a high understanding of these areas in a work team, in a company, the language is there. People are talking about currencies, and I see some companies that I'm doing some work with now where these languages are there. then the culture is people understand that they have to look after each other. It's that very mature piece that we're all trying to get to of the interdependent culture, what brother's keeper. We value safety, we all look after each other to achieve zero. The third area I want to cover is just thinking about health. And I put some facts here. So in the UK in 2020, there was 111 workplace fatalities. The UK population is about 62 million, around that, and that's quite a low number. It was impacted probably a little bit because of COVID. The year before was 130. But there's an estimated 13,000 deaths from workplace health hazard exposures last year. And I'd ask you, what are the figures in your country? And how can we change that? We've put a lot of work and emphasis on workplace fatalities, and we tend to look at health as something that it's happened previously, I can't do much about it. But it's happening today, and it's changing, it's going to be the future for somebody else to look after. So I'd ask you to think about that in the context of that ABC model I talked to you about. And in this area about consequences and behavior. So the strongest impact on our behavior is when things are positive, immediate and certain, what I call PIC, PIC, around it. And we'll see how people, and I said to you about how people react to recognition, how people react to praise. It's at that moment, it can be very, very positive experience for people. But as soon as the likelihood is changed to certain or uncertain, it has a significant impact on our behavior and how we see about it. But I'd also remind you that changing behavior from just dealing with consequence won't last long. When you've had a lot of praise, you'll be very positive for a while, it'll drop away. So you have to tackle the antecedents of behavior to make people feel positive, mindset, mind map, and some of the currencies challenges I just talked about. Not just think it can all come from currencies. From a negative way, I would say to you, think about this. Think about smoking. We all know that smoking can have damage to your health. It's even written on the side of boxes of cigarettes now, and has been for a long time. But because it's not certain, people again will think it won't happen to me, it's uncertain. So I'll carry on smoking. And there's the addictive part of obviously nicotine as well. But health exposure in the workplace, I would say to you, are negative. In most cases, they're future. They won't happen immediately. Whilst there's a level of certainty from some of them, there's also a level of uncertainty. So they have a weak impact on behavior. And I would think of things like dust levels, asbestos still being around, chemicals, and what chemicals could cause harm. So for my time in Tata Steel, I'll show you how we did this with Tata Steel Europe on my next slide. We try to focus on this, but I would say to you, there's a lot of weak signals. You have to go and find what's going on, and you have to have energy, because there'll be lots going on, and there's a huge temptation to focus on things that are injuries that are immediate. But I would encourage you to be health and safety people and think about health hazards in this context as well. In Tata Steel Europe, then, which was 40,000 people plus, what I found when I took over as a health and safety director for the group, but in the European part, that people talked about health and safety, and as leaders, our MD, the MDs, our leaders, because we'd been on quite a long safety journey, could stand up with no preparation and talk about safety and talk about it very well from a knowledgeable point of view, an emotional point of view, and really had tremendous commitment to it. When I asked them, could you stand up and talk about health and well-being of your people in the same way, most of them said no. I'd have to go and get a health expert. And that's probably where we were 20 years ago in safety. They couldn't, in that way, a safety manager would come and talk about it. So one of the things we did was try and, what I would talk about, how do you make the complex simple? And how do you be able to talk about health and well-being in Tata Steel Europe without being a medical professional, but be able to explain what we're doing and why we do it. So we did it into two boxes: health affecting work and work affecting health. And we had a number of activities in health affecting work, things like health promotion, what we call fitness to work medicals, were you able to work in various areas. We had occupational health teams that could do some rehabilitation. But then in work affecting health, we had exposure to health hazards, what I was just talking to you about, motivation to attend working controls, and that was, are people engaged and want to come in to work? Is this a great place to work that people want to come? Or is it not really that motivating? And if there's a chance to take a day off, I will. And then safety incidents. And we looked at these and said, well, how do we measure some of this? And we had data around sickness absence, when people are off and the reasons why people are off. Similarly around restricted work cases, rehabilitation. We had days lost record about why would people not be in work from days lost. We had short-term absence. OHI is organization health. What you may talk about is an employee survey around it. And occupational health, we did something called top 5, and we said to each area, each department across Tata Steel Europe, particularly in the operational areas, what are your health hazards? And we want to understand what are the top 5 that you can see improvement potential in. And we'll just focus on those top 5. We had one area then that we covered both, mental health and musculoskeletal. And there was always wanting to be a debate about, was it work, had it arisen in work, had it arisen at home? And we stopped that by debate and said, we don't really want to know where it arose, but how can we help it? And we had some sickness absence on that. And over time, by having something as simple as that, every area was able to talk about, this is what I'm doing in health. And they would very often want to talk about health promotion and good things they were doing, which was great. But I used to say to them, no, I want you to talk about this. I want you to tell me about health hazards and what you're doing. Because I worry that we're killing people today and we don't know about it. And I want to be confident we're not killing people today and we just don't know about it because they just haven't died today. So we focused a lot on that. And it was challenging. And we used to say to people, I want to understand, what are your hazards? How do you control them and how effective those controls are? And just take us through those steps with your health hazards. So in summary, these are the 3 areas I've covered. The risk thinking, if you remember back to the triangle, try and think about what the weak signals are around that and how you create that line about, I'm picking up a lot of information about what's going on, what's happening when no one's around, what the culture of this organization is, and I'm using that to prevent fatalities. How we as humans operate, as in the second area about our behavior, and focusing on what drives our behavior and how can I have positive conversations around that to improve behavior and support positive. And finally, that area of health hazards. So and I encourage our actions today on people's lives in the future. And in doing that, I'd encourage you to try and make complex simple and for line leaders to own it. that's the end of my presentation. So I thank you for listening, and I welcome. I'll see if I can stop sharing, and I welcome some questions. Yeah.
Wonderful insights, sir, on this perception and behavior-based thinking, because that comes out to be a major challenge in many of the incidences. So we next move on to the question and answer session. So as we are a bit ahead of time, so we'll be taking two questions. I'll request Ashish and Sovik to please take on the question answer session and just filter out two questions for our dignitaries. And for the rest, we will request to mail the questions in our mail ID in the flyer so that they can be answered by CEO. So over to you, Sovik and Ashish.
Yes, ma'am. So, thank you, ma'am. And we have received so many responses from the participants. And also, we have received there. So, please post your WhatsApp number here. We will create one WhatsApp group and then add you all, and we will inform you about the weekend talks every week. So, now going to the first question. The question for Mr. Andrew Page. Sometimes top management has to decide or has to balance between safety and cost. So, sir, can you put some light on it?
Yeah, I think.
Andrew, sir?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a very good question, and its management have to think about it, but we all have to think about it. So, let me just give you an example. You can buy a car, or you can buy a bike. You can have different safety levels in different cars and different bikes. You can do different things. So there is that question about how much do I spend on safety for what benefit. I also think it's worth, and I think people can do analysis about what do I think the benefit will be, and you can do that. I would encourage people to do that through a risk analysis and a risk assessment, to say, well, what's the option if I didn't do it, against the option of what if we spent that money. And in my experience, that's what management would expect to see, because management are used to understanding having to make decisions of priorities against resource. I think what I found in Tata Steel quite early on, so we had it when I was in chorus, and then we did it across the whole group, and the board from Mumbai approved it pretty early on. We had what we called a risk grid, and the risk grid was a company risk grid, and it indicated a tolerance level for harm in the organization, and what would we say was acceptable or not acceptable within it. And that sort of calibrated. If you said it was a fatality, it was quite clear what you would do. And it became the values, almost built into the values of the company. And I would encourage in large organizations to do that, but even in small organizations, try and have a risk grid of what you think is acceptable for what you're doing in your organization. I also think we have to be mature enough to say, and we used to say that in steel, if we wanted our steel to have zero risk in our industry, the best thing we could do is not make steel. So, you are balancing these things, and that's what risk is all about. It's about balance and making judgments. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your answer. You have nicely explained that how to balance between safety and cost. Now, another question for Professor J. Maiti. As safety involves risks related engineering activities. So there should be some universal indicator to measure safety. So can you put some light on it, Professor Jemaithi?
Yes, I think it's another good question. That is pointing. If you see that the outcome-based indicators like the accidents or fatality or injuries, all are they are dependent on the management of the particular plant, how much effort is put, and all those things. So as a result, we are saying instead of just relying on these indicators, you go to the cause and effort related indicators. What are the cause? Cause is basically your risk control system is failing. So what is the weakness in the risk control system? What are the effectiveness measures of the risk control system? So that is the fundamental issue now. And from there, the lagging and leading indicators are coming. The effectiveness indicators are leading indicators, whereas weakness indicators are the lagging indicators. So we, at present, what I can tell you that yes, there is no consensus. In fact, from the definition of risk point of view, also there is no consensus. And this is one area, that safety engineering, where there are a lot of confusion starting from the definition, from the measurement, and from the actions point of view. So safety analytics will answer these questions. We are working on leading and lagging indicators. What I mean to say here, leading and lagging indicators, suppose you have inspection and maintenance program. I want to know whether that program is effective or not. How are you measuring? What are the indicators you have developed? If the inspection is failing, why it is failing? Where is this? This kind of data is not there. Instead, we have data on the tip of the iceberg, where basically which is basically something outcome based. So you have to have indicators from the cause, from the effort point of view, from the risk control system point of view. We will be having some lecture on leading and lagging indicators. You will get a clear view of this. Another important aspect here is asset integrity. We think that safety is the ultimate end result. No, asset integrity, like mechanical integrity, your personal integrity, organizational integrity. Do we have any information, any data? We don't have. So the major issue, the thing what actually there are so many industry participants today, also from academics, many, let us have developed the strong database. So in order to develop strong database, we have to define many concepts. We have to give proper measurement scheme, and then only it will be possible to your precisely your answer is till now, your question is still now not answered. Because organization to organization, people are doing it differently, but at least at a particular sector, industry sector, this kind of effort is required, and our center is trying to do this. I hope that in coming days, we will be able to give you better answer.
Thank you, Professor Jemaithi, for your nice explanation. So now I hand over to Ma'am Mom Mitra.
Thank you, Sovik, Sanjana, and Ashish for the Q&A session. Request all the participants to please mail their questions in the mail ID given in the flyer, so that they can be answered by CoE in due course. So the program concludes here. Thanks a lot. We'll be again meeting on next Friday with another technical session of this weekend talk. So hope it was a very informative session, sir, and for industry practitioners like us also. So happy to be a part of this session, sir. Thanks all. The program concludes here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. You did very well.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Page, for
Okay,
your kind
thank you.
support.
Thank you all participants.
Thank you, all participants. Yes.
Basha is smiling.
Hey, Basa is there. Yes, Basa, thank you. Yeah, I think many of you joined, and really we appreciate your help, your support. Please keep joining, and in the subsequent time we will be the pinpointed specific lecture topic we will choose, and 1 hour lecture should be there. And today we set the tone that what actually we are going to do and what are the different aspects from engineering, management, analytics to behavioral aspects also, what Mr. Page has very elaborately explained. So thank you, Mr. Page, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Andrew. Your speech was very good, very educating to me.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Obi, and take care. Speak to you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, gentlemen. Good night
Thank
to all
you.
of you.
Good night, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
So, Sobhik, Ashish, Mom, you all have done wonderful job, Sinjana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And in fact, our scholars and our other students who were working silently in the background, I really appreciate all of your efforts. Okay, so ultimately what will happen, another important part I want to tell particularly to all of you, that there are a lot of experts from different countries. They have already given their consent, and they will be giving a lecture on specific topics. And as this particular area is not yet mature, and I'm sure that our effort will be very, very fruitful. With that, Professor Krishna also can comment on it.
I think he has left.
Acha. So, okay then. So let me go also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
everybody. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Ashish da,
Bolo.
have you